So hi, welcome to Good Noise Podcast. I'm Shane.
I'm Glory.
And we're here with
Addison Grace.
And we have some questions to say about the upcoming album, Diving Lessons. So congrats on that. By the way, how do you feel about the response to the announcement so far?
I feel really excited. I feel like everybody that's listened to it or knows about it within like my immediate group is just like really excited about it. And like I have people in my life who aren't really expressive who have been like, this is really good, and it's like shocking to hear that from them.
Yeah.
And then I think it's just really nice to see how excited my audience is and how they're excited that I'm finally like having a full-length album instead of just like an EP or a single. So
yeah, the album fucking rocks.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
The praise is well deserved. Fucking amazing album.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. I'm really excited about it. I keep like telling my manager, I'm like, I think this is the greatest thing I've ever made, and he's like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah. I would hope so.
Yeah, and you know, I picked up there's a little bit of the little bit of a sound change here. There's some synths making their way into the music now.
Yeah, definitely. I think my last two EPs were a lot about like figuring out how I wanted to sound, and I feel like with this album it's really me just like putting my foot down and being like, this is how I want to sound and this is my sound. And I'm excited about every single song on the album. Like there's not a song that I'm like, that one's fine, I don't really like this one. And so I've just been like overjoyed by it. And I feel like I have finally found my sound as an artist after like trying to search for it for a while.
That's very exciting.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. So is there any meaning behind the album title or cover art?
Definitely. I feel like I've never thought about something more than everything associated with this album. The meaning behind the album art, I had that very specific vision of kind of making it look like a portal for a while. And I wanted it to be like, you can really only see me through like this mirror or through this portal type thing. And I wanted it to kind of look watery and just have a bunch of like plants and all of that around it and be very like nature-esque. And I had struggled with the title for a while, but I ended up settling on Diving Lessons specifically because I had this memory from when I was a kid where I can't swim. So I used to be in swimming lessons as a kid. And during one of the swimming lessons, it was like you had to jump off the high dive, and I was like 6 years old, didn't know how to swim, terrified to do this. And they were like, just jump off the high dive and the lifeguard at the bottom will kind of like catch you and help you. But like that didn't convince me not to be scared. And I remember that I jumped off, but the lifeguard slipped and I started going down.
No.
And it was almost like, obviously I didn't drown, but I went down further than I should have, and the lifeguard had to come get me, pull me to the side, and I remember just how much it sucked, and everybody was like, we're so proud of you, that was so awesome, look at you. And I just remember just being angry and not happy. And this entire album is about the healing process, and I sort of related the two stories together, where it's like everybody, when you heal from something or get better from something, they're like, we're so proud of you, that must have been so hard, da 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 da. And for me, the healing process, we don't talk about how it really sucks and how you shouldn't have had to do that. And for me, it was kind of like when I hit the water and when I had to do that high dive lesson or whatever, that it was sort of the same idea and the same sort of pain that I had to endure. And so I ended up relating the two, and the whole like album art is supposed to look like the high dive and like jumping in and just all of that, so it's like one giant metaphor.
Yeah, that is a great connection, just that I feel like a lot of people can relate to, just growing up and learning and having to take those risks and then just being like patted on the back like, you were stressed out the entire time but you did so good. It's like, no, I feel fucking awful actually. Yeah, wow. Fucking awesome.
So can you tell us a little bit about your writing process for the album?
Yeah, I think it's probably like the most I have self-written in a while. I feel like a lot of my music is 50% working with other co-writers and other artists, and 50% me just writing alone in my room. And I love both equally, because it's like one side is like just experimenting with myself and my talents, and the other one is learning from other people and getting better at the craft, you know? And for this one specifically, a lot of the really sad ones on this album came out of me from like nowhere. There's a song called Bath on the album, which I think is one of the saddest songs I've ever written. And it was funny because it's sort of about a situation that happened years ago I haven't thought about. And one day I just sat down and was like, just like, it kind of like poured out of nowhere. And I feel like that happened with a lot of the songs. Like Slime sort of came out of nowhere and wasn't even going to be on the album because I wrote it so last minute. And stuff like White Lie came out of nowhere, and Pessimistic came out of nowhere. And so I feel like it was just like this past year, I was so used to like writing about things that I was going through and things that I was experiencing. And this last year, I feel like I've been the happiest I've ever been. And so I haven't like had something sad to write about or something hurtful to write about. And so it's been interesting to sort of have like this weird healing process where I'm like, I'm writing about something I haven't thought about in like 3-4 years. And that's not typical of my writing, but I think because of that, it became like a really honest album about that healing process. And there's like equally really sad songs and equally really happy, silly songs. Like I have a song called I Miss Your Dog on the album, and it's just like this stupid, happy encore. But yeah, it's just, I feel like the writing process was hard to describe because it feels like it came out of nowhere, and it also feels like I've been wanting to write about these things for like 5 years.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, you know, a lot of these songs kind of came out of nowhere. So like when you were writing, was there even a plan for a record? Were you writing songs that weren't clicking, and then the ones that just came out of nowhere were the ones that made the record? Like basically, was there an album in mind when you were writing this?
The funny thing is that there wasn't. I knew that the next project was going to be an album, but I don't plan ahead ever. So I was like, I was just writing to write, and there's obviously songs that didn't make it or didn't get finished and just never went to production. Like even White Lie was gonna probably be on my last EP or be a single that wasn't even on the album. But then I took so long with it that it just became an album song, and we just like moved it over, and I was like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can put it on the album because I don't even know what the album is yet.
Yeah, that works.
And so while I was writing it, I really had no specific idea in mind. I think the closest thing I had was like, I've been writing a lot of sad songs. Let's write a happy one today. Or I've been writing a lot of happy songs. I want to get introspective. And that was kind of the process. And once I like sat down with all of the demos, I realized how much of it was water themed. And I was like, I can make something off of this and I can tell a story. And it almost like worked too well, which is why I'm like, it came out of nowhere. I feel like I got possessed.
You mentioned that, like, you know, this is a lot about like a healing process, and that you're also the happiest that you've ever been, like, while you were working on this. Was there any sort of like difficulty with you, like kind of pulling up the past, and like were you going through anything, or like were you finally in a good spot where like you were able to deal with bringing those past things up without like getting too down in the dumps, like bringing it back up?
I feel like it definitely hit a lot of sore spots that I didn't realize existed. But I sort of go on the stance that I don't like releasing a song unless I feel like I'm ready to talk about it. And so I feel like people are going to hear Bath and they're going to be really like put back and like, oh wow, this is really intense. Or they'll hear a song like Say Sorry to My Brother, they're going to feel really intensely about. And there's a lot of serious subjects in it, but I made the decision to put it out and to release it and to work on it because I'm healed enough to talk about it, and I want to be able to talk about it. I think it's really similar to when I released I Want to Be a Boy Forever ago, when I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how I feel. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah.
And it feels similar to this project. So I think when people first listen to it, they're going to be like, it's going to be a little jarring for them, because I feel like a lot of the singles are more of the happier, upbeat ones. And then they're going to understand like the depth of the album and how much thought was put into it. I think sometimes when I listen to it now, I'm like, I've heard the song so many times that I'm the tiniest bit numb to them almost.
Yeah.
And so Say Sorry to My Brother is like a really intense emotional song that's supposed to like sound like you're in like this drunk driving type of situation. And it's supposed to be a narrative about like parental figures and being a child and not knowing what's going on in life, and not being able to understand what's happening in a situation. And I feel like that's already such an intense subject, but now I hear it and I'm like, this is like slightly out of tune. Like, why did I do it that way? But then I like play it for I play it for my roommates and they're like on the verge of tears. I'm like, why are you so sad? Like, we already know what I'm gonna say. Like, I've said this like 20 times.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm able to have that lightheartedness now, but I still understand like how intense it's going to be for somebody on the first listen, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what song off this album took the longest to write, and which one is your personal favorite?
Ooh, I feel like, that's hard. Okay. The longest one to write, I feel like, I feel like probably Pessimistic took the longest to write. I think it was because that one is specifically a self-write, and I was so determined for it to be a really good song, and I was so inspired about how I wanted to voice it. And I remember that I was like scared that I was like not gonna get it to my managers in time. I was like, this one, like, it's gonna be so good, it's gonna lead the album.
Yeah.
And when I first sent it to them, they were like, okay, this is pretty good. And then we got to like the very first stage of production, and I sent it to my managers, and immediately they messaged back and they're like, holy shit, this is a single. And it was like only the second one on the album that we had even worked on yet.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why I took such a long time writing it before I even considered it for production, because those notes and some of the lyrics had been in my folders for like months at that point. I feel like production wise, White Lie took the longest, but that was because like it started off as like a Paramore type of song, and then it turned into like this hyper pop song, and then it ended up being like the most hyper pop one on the album.
That's a crazy twist.
And then it was like I also like changed the pre-chorus, so like if any of them had been changed the most, it was White Lie. But Pessimistic took the longest, definitely.
All right. Okay. And your favorite?
Your personal favorite? Yeah.
Oh, my personal favorite. I am really proud of Slime, because basically what happened with that one was I had the melody idea and I was sort of just like fucking around and just putting lyrics and putting whatever I wanted to say. And I didn't expect it to get on the album because I was aiming for like 10 or 11 songs and I already had 10 songs. So I was like, oh, I don't need to write this one. But for some reason I was like, no, I want to write this one. Yeah. And when I showed it to my managers and my label, they were like, okay, you can record it if we have time. And I was like, okay, fair. And so I ended up flying to London, working with Cavetown, and we had more than enough time because apparently we work very well together.
That's good.
And we ended up getting it produced, and I sent it to my managers, and everyone started freaking out over how cool it was. And it was funny because we were going to have it where I Miss Your Dog was going to be a single, and that one got like ripped away and Slime got put instead. And I got so excited because it was like this song that wasn't going to be on the album that I had like written within like just a few days, and like nobody was really like putting much attention into it for good reason, you know. But I feel like I was really proud, and I ended up getting on a phone call with everybody when they were telling me they wanted Slime to be a single. and they I ended up like laughing, and I was like, I told you so, like it's such a good song. And I was so proud of it, and they were like, no, we always knew it was a good song. I'm like, I know you knew, but like I just need to say I told you so, that like this one had to be on the album. Let me have this win.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Love that. So how'd the track list for the album come about? Did you write the opener be the opener, closer be a closer, shuffle around and see what fits? What was that process like?
So basically, I knew that it was going to be about healing, and a big part for me is I never want like somebody to listen to an album and be too sad for too long or be too happy for too long. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like you need to have a nice array and kind of like a little bit of a roller coaster.
Of course.
But when I was sitting down with my girlfriend one day, and I was like, I feel like I can really tell a story with this. And I had sort of made up this really soft concept for the story of the album. Mm-hmm. And I realized that it naturally already had a story of like being really young and naive, and then going like falling in love, and then going through this really traumatic thing and healing from it, and like the stages of grief, and then ending on this really positive note. And so for me, it's like the first one on the album, Fish, is almost like an author's note for what it's going to be about, what the sound is. And then the story starts on Pessimistic and it ends on Forgive You. And then I Miss Your Dog is sort of just like an encore, as like a sorry for putting you through that, like hope you're having a nice night type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's how it kind of came to be. There wasn't really like a lot of shuffling around. It took me a while to like say what it was going to be, but after I had put it all together and my girlfriend agreed because she knows better than me, it was sort of just like it was always supposed to be that way. Like there's no other way to listen to it or to order it. So
I think that like just in coincidence, the sonically it kind of flows very well, where it takes you on that sonic journey as well, with the highs and the lows, because at one point it's an acoustic strip down, the next second it's fucking crazy ass hyper pop that I didn't know that you were even going to be doing on this record. You know, it's all over the map here.
I know, it's so funny. There's like literal violins on one song, and then the next one is just like, I'm going to blow your eardrums off.
I was like, wait a minute, did they send the wrong album when those songs were coming out? I was like, this don't seem right.
Just gotta keep everybody on their toes.
Exactly.
You were doing it.
You did a great job. So would you be able to tell us where your headspace is at while you're creating this record?
Yeah, I think it was definitely like a very nostalgic headspace. I feel like every time I went into a co-writing session or a production session, I felt like I was almost like at the start of my career again. Because in a way, I feel like I had been trying to find my sound and trying to find how I wanted to voice these things for so long that like creating this album almost felt like a rebirth of sorts for me musically. And so it kind of turned into just like I felt like I was recording everything for the first time and writing for the first time, and that's what made it so exciting to me. Was just really feeling like, yeah, this is who I am as an artist. And so I feel like even though I have like a good amount of songs behind me that I still love and still play, obviously, because they're a huge part of my story, I feel like this album sort of defined who I am as an artist, to me at least. And so because of that, it just felt really nostalgic and exciting, and it felt very new. And at the same time, it was like really comfortable because I was working with people that I knew I worked well with already. Like I was working with Cavetown, who's like a close friend of mine. And I was working with Cameron Hale, who I've worked on so many of my favorite songs with, and all my favorite co-writers. And I had a team that I knew. And so it was almost just like a really comfortable, like childish, like feeling. And I felt so safe to like make this album and to talk about these things and to touch on really serious topics without like depressing everybody in the room, you know.
I gotcha.
And so I feel like that's sort of the headspace I was in, and that's why I'm so excited about this album.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it seems like you were just set up for success. Like everything was lined up perfectly.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted that by the time I reached my first album. And so I'm glad that I got there and that it didn't feel forced, you know?
Absolutely. Fuck yeah.
So how do you recommend your fans to listen to this album for the first time? Should do in the car with friends and dark with headphones on? Is it a workout album, party album? What do you personally recommend?
Ooh, what I always like to do is do not skip any of the singles just because you know them.
Hate people that do
I
that.
feel like people do that, and I tend to do that
The
sometimes
worst.
too.
No.
My partner does that shit. I'm like, stop it. Stop that.
What the hell?
No.
I know. And so it's like, this one is like very specific. I know every artist says this, but they're like, this has a story, but like mine literally has a story to it.
Yes. Follow
And
along.
it's going to be jarring if you skip anything. And so for that reason, I'd say that you should either listen in your room with really good headphones on, or you should find a bunch of friends and someone that has the nicer car with the nicer speakers and just drive around and listen to all of it. Because I feel like unless you're listening to it on really nice car speakers or your headphones in your room, you're not going to get everything all at once. Like if you put it on your phone and you're in the shower and it's just your phone speaker, you're not going to get the full story of it.
No.
And so I feel like just make sure you listen to it with friends you trust or with yourself before you listen to it casually, I guess.
Absolutely.
All right.
Fuck yeah. So this one should be super, super quick off the top of your head. I want you to describe this album for new listeners in 3 words. No more, no less.
Ghost healing journey.
Oh, damn. Ghost. Okay, I fuck with that. I like that.
And in that same train of thought, is there a certain feeling or emotion you want listeners to have while going through the album?
I think I just want people to be really open-minded. I want them to not think of me when they listen to the album, because I've made like a very specific concept and story to not have it be an album about my life and about Addison Grace. So I want them to think of it as like a third party. They can think of it as like anybody, anyone. It can be them. It can be someone they know. Just don't think about me.
Yeah.
And then when you go back to it, listen however.
Okay. That's very interesting. First time an artist has told us like, don't even think about me when you're taking in the music. Like they'll be like, make it your own and shit like that, like kind of leaning towards that, but no one has just point blank been like, this is about you, it's not about me,
That's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's just because like I said earlier, I have a very soft concept of a story. And people are going to realize once they see the music video for Pessimistic specifically, that this relates back to like a character I've hinted at in my previous EP. And it's basically like, I don't want people to think of me, because I feel like if you hear these really sad songs or these really like serious lyrics or anything like that, people are going to be like, which of Addison's exes or parents or da 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 da.
Gotcha.
And my thing is that it's not specifically about that.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be a journey, and so I don't want people to think that it's like my specific person or my story or any of this. And it's more so just a story of the healing process and going through something traumatic and what childhood is and what growing up is. And so that's why I don't want people to think of me, because I hate when people are like, oh, I want to speculate what this is about.
Yeah.
But I wrote this album like, yes, it's about something, but it's also not,
Yeah.
It's about everything and nothing all at the same time. And I love writing for other people, because it's like, when I listen to these songs, like I wrote it for a specific reason, but now I don't relate in that way anymore. So it's not about that anymore to me. And it doesn't, like, you shouldn't speculate on that, because it doesn't even mean that to me anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why when people listen to it, I want them to think about them and their situation, or just like a made up character in their head,
I gotcha. And so you mentioned like you don't relate to it anymore. Have these songs kind of already taken a new meaning for you before like they're even out in the world?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like I, whenever when I start a project, I'm absolutely relating to it in a very specific way. But when I finish it, it feels like it's already like a toddler to me. Like it's not like a newborn baby anymore.
Yeah.
And so even specifically, like I wrote White Lie about like a really bad date I had, but now it's like I genuinely can't remember that person's name anymore. And it's because like now I've had a girlfriend, I've had a relationship, I've moved on, and I don't talk to that person. It was like 2 dates I had like a year and a half ago. And so because of that, it's like now I listen to White Lie and it feels like a completely different story to me. Or I listen to like Strawberry on the album, and I wrote that about a TV show, and I ended up like now when I listen to it, it's a really sweet love story, and I think about my relationship, or I think about like my mom, you know. And so I feel like it's just like it's ever changing, and sometimes I don't even remember why I initially even wrote a song.
I got you. All right.
That's completely fair. So are you able to touch on any particularly challenging or standout moments from the creation of this album, positive or negative?
Ooh, one of the positive things was because of working with everybody that I had already worked with before, it was sort of just like, I feel like the past like 2 years of my career has just been experimenting on who I work well with and what my team should be and who I am. And for this album, it's like that's already decided now because I've had 2 years to think about that. And so because of that, it was so easy to create something, and I didn't feel pressured to be a certain way. And when I had questions, I wasn't scared to ask them, and I wasn't scared to stand up for myself when I felt strongly about something. And it was the most supported that I had ever felt. Not that I wasn't supported in the past, but like now the idea was made, you know. For negative stuff, I remember like I get really down on myself in the studio, especially if I'm working back to back to back to back. And I remember that I think it was Ghost in the Attic I was working on, and for some reason I just could not hit this like half step note, and I was like really beating myself up on it to the point where I was like on the verge of tears because I had done this like 20 times and it seems so simple to me. And I remember Cavetown Robin had looked back and he was like, "You should take a nap." And I was like, "But we gotta finish that." He's like, "You should take a nap." And so I went back inside and I like sat for 20 minutes and kind of like rested a little bit. I came back down and he had like tea for me and he was like, "Let's get this note." And I was like, "Let's get this note." And like 2 takes and I got it immediately. And so I feel like that's like kind of what this album felt like, where it's like obviously I had times where I would still get down myself or still struggle, like it wasn't perfect or easy, but it was just like I was working with people who not only cared about me as an artist but cared about me as a person. And so because I got to work in that sense, it just like I felt like I could be so vulnerable and have such a peaceful time making it. So yeah, those were probably some of the standout moments.
Love that. Hell yeah. So for the last couple questions, we're going to shift completely away from music. So if you could be one animal for the rest of your life, what animal would you be and why?
I would be a Pomeranian, because I feel like my hair now looks like one, and I love wearing a little outfit. I love wearing a little fancy outfit, and I feel like I would love to spend the rest of my time as just a little dog that's cared for by like a rich old lady.
Absolutely. That's fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah.
That's fucking awesome. So if you could have lunch with any celebrity or artist, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Ooh, I would really want to have lunch with, oh God, that's hard. I feel like maybe I have 2 answers. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Go for it.
Okay. I would really love to eat with Freddie Mercury. because I feel like he was such a sensation for like an underprivileged person coming up in the music industry and kind of like fighting all these biases, and was also just like such representation for queerness. And I would just like love to pick at his brain and hear how he made music. Like, what is Bohemian Rhapsody? Like, how did you make any of that? How did you do that? So I'd love to talk to him. I would also love to eat lunch with Taylor Swift. And I feel like it's just because like she's been around for so long and is like such a dominating force in music. And you know, I listened to her when she was like country and like completely different and just like a teenage girl. And I feel like even though like I am a guy and that's how I identify and that's how I feel, I still had that like teenage girl experience in a way. And so I feel like I relate to her a lot in that sort of like upbringing. And I would just love to talk to her about like how she writes, how she feels about her music, and just like be able to like get her opinion on my stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That'd be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
And for this last question, boom, you're on a desert island. You can bring one movie, one album, and one person. Who and what are you bringing?
For an album, I am going to bring... Honestly, I might bring the new Olivia Rodrigo album.
Oh, shit.
I've sort of been addicted to that recently.
Okay.
I might bring that one, or I'd bring a Phoebe Bridgers album. Either way, no lose. For one person, I would probably bring... Who would I bring? I'd probably bring my girlfriend.
I was going to say, if she's watching, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
You're like, who would I bring? I was like, come on, say it.
I feel like she would not enjoy that I picked her to be on a stranded island with me, but I feel like she would also get upset if I was on a stranded island, so I have to take her, and she's going down with me. And then, what was one item, right? Movie.
You did album, you did person, movie, yeah.
Okay, movie. I would probably pick... I might pick Bullet Train.
Oh shit, it's a good ass
movie. Yeah, I watched that and it was just like, I feel like it's such a niche like humor that really spoke to me, and I feel like that's one of those movies that I could watch like 5 times and still find funny.
100%. Yeah, I kind of fell asleep while watching it the first time, but every time I would wake up, I would just start laughing. That shit was beautiful.
It was so good. It was so good. Just like the water bottle. Like
I gotta rewatch it, but like completely awake this time. Yeah. It was good.
So as I said, that's all the questions you have today. Is there anything that you would like to plug?
Please listen to my album. It's called Diving Lessons, not Driving Lessons.
Nope, I didn't fuck it up.
There's not a single car in any of this album.
Nope, none at all.
So
not one.
That's my main plug. Go check out the music videos too, because if you like lore and you like concepts, the music videos will do that for you. But if you just want to listen to a good ass album, just listen to it.
All right.
Hell yeah.
Well, thank you for stopping. This has been Addison Grace, and we have been the Good Noise Podcast.